People say you can't smell pictures. And I correct and say the inexperienced can't smell pictures. So it begins the freak out for Hot Rod 2023. Today's 5/20, and we're leaving fairly soon. I don't have the day count right in front of me because I don't want to look at it right now. I want to think about it. Anyway, in typical fashion, I decided to make some changes. The car has a Tremec TKO 600 with 64 overdrive and a 411 gear. Well, it had a 411 gear. So now we are preparing a nice 355 to go in it. Need to blast that off. It's already got crap on it. Although the shop isn't exactly, well, it's dirty. So we start tearing apart today. Things are going fairly well. I've done this a couple times. The interesting parts of the conversation will be, we're not doing anything with the brakes. I'll put seals in it and maybe go to green bearings. I'm going to rinse these grubby buggers out and see if there's much of them left. I don't know that I love the green bearing setup. And eventually, if I go to rear discs, I'll have to do it. I don't know. I have no opinion about it, really. I think the green bearing setup is good, and I've got them, so I might do that. The conversation surrounding them about them, oh, they don't take side load. Yeah, I'm kind of partial to the original setup, so I'm not sure I'm going to do this if these bearings look okay until I have to. So I won't weigh in on either side. I can see advantages on both sides. I like the green bearing setup. It's fairly simple, but anyway, we'll get moving. I'll clean these up and I'll show you guys how I take axle collars and bearings off. And hopefully it will be something educational because these things aren't exactly fun to work on. Hiccup number one. Same housing, same everything. Give you a little detail here in a second, but you'll notice this one has two pinion snubber bolts that retain it. And while I was chasing this setup, I noticed that this guy right here, something bad happened here. So now I get to fix that. So hiccup number one. So typically how we fix these is you find the center of it and then you punch it, which I've been doing here. And then as you punch it, sometimes you loosen it, but it's very unlikely, especially not with a hand punch. And you just punch it and you create an artificial center on it and you drill into it. But this one, when I did that, I noticed, if you look real close here, that is not a broken bolt. So my hiccup may not be a hiccup after all, because as I dig on it, it really looks a lot like red dirt. Well, a little history on this housing. This is a 489 housing, and I dug it out of a bunch of swept line stuff that I bought. I don't know where it came from, but a lot of it came from Oklahoma with red dirt. So pretty sure this is just dirt. I'm gonna dig it out, tap it, and we're gonna be done with this. So not bad news after all. This makes a little more sense, really, coming out of a truck. I don't know that trucks had pinion snubbers. I've seen several that didn't, and I don't know if they just got taken off, because, you know, a lot of the stuff we see is pretty beat up to begin with, but or if it just never had one. So that makes more sense to me that this wouldn't have one, because trucks don't have like that floor pan to beat up against. So this is probably how that happens. So I don't know that this has ever had a bolt in it, which would make this real interesting to tap later. But anyway, I'll keep digging, and you see, we're just digging red dirt out of it. So off we go. Yeah, it looks fairly straight. So we get it all dug out and re-threaded. Everything looks like it's going to work just fine. So tragedy averted there. No concerns. And it is just the pinion bolts anyway, so if things get really bad, we can just open that hole up a little more and tap it to a larger size. So a little obsessive, perhaps. I don't think it's going to matter. So as you can see, that's a 489 housing. The beauty of the 489s are that they're a little stronger. They have a crush sleeve originally set up in them that I don't care for. And they have, instead of shimming your front preload onto your bearing, they have a crush sleeve in there that if you torque this down to the correct amount, it automatically preloads the bearings. So the problem with that is if that crush sleeve gives up, it's just this, it's a long piece of steel cone that just crushes, hence the clever name of crush sleeve. But they can give up their preload, and then they destroy your ring and pinion, and just make a hell of a mess. So it's not super common, but it does happen, and enough that people buy a kit like I did that gets rid of it and just uses shims as Walter P. intended for bearing preload. That way, if I have to replace this seal in the future, typically when that happens, and that was starting to happen with the other one, as you can see, it's got a little bit of, it's bleeding a bit, and it was coming out of the pinion seal some. So not a huge problem, but something you don't appreciate on a new driveway. And what I wanted to do with this one was make it to where if I had to replace that seal, I wouldn't have to go through the crush sleeve that the other one has again. So that's why we did that. So this one has a crush sleeve eliminator kit in it. It's just shims, new seals, new bearings everywhere. And these are, if I can spin this guy around, he's kind of heavy, forgive me. These are 355 gears. And as you can see, it's got a different looking rear end in it. Instead of clutches, which the other one has, and you can see them here. This might be a cone, I'm not sure, but what you see is those springs in there, and those springs preload onto a friction surface. It's either a clutch pack or it's a conical shaped little gizmo that creates friction across the axles or across the differential to keep both axles fed. This one does the same thing, only you can barely see the corners of it here. It uses a helical gear set up inside, which you can kind of see right here. So these are supposed to be a lot better. I don't know. I've never used one, but it seemed like the right thing to do with it, and I don't plan on doing it again. So buy once, cry once. So we put this in. New bearings everywhere. These don't need any special gear additives either for them, like the clutch styles do. So you just put it in, throw some gear lube in it, and forget it. You missed the good part of me cleaning this housing out, scraping all the gasket goo off of it, and just generally rolling around in a bunch of stuff that smells horrible. Between that and the brake fluid, or the brake cleaner that I use to clean it up, I'm sure it won't have any negative health effects on me. But this is essentially the, I don't know, it's a tried and true method. I mean, obviously I'm here by myself. You don't see a bunch of people helping me. And this isn't it's not a terrible job to do by yourself, honestly. I don't know if there's any special technique or anything involved in it, but obviously you don't want to nick up your gears that you've got freshly done. So I try and center the whole thing on a cradle, on a jack, and I can see my bolt alignment on this side. So you just kind of walk it in there and then start a couple nuts, and it's pretty much over. But getting it up and above, you have to go a little higher to clear this section here where the gear is. And after that, you're good. So we're gonna try and slip this in here and see how it goes. See if I can get her to work without jacking my gasket up too bad. A younger version of me might have just full-on bench pressed this thing in, but that guy, you crazy. He ain't doing that no more. Would be cool if you had somebody to work a jack for you. But we got it. Make sure my gasket's still in place. And it appears to be. Now, I just have to get my jack out of the way because it's sitting kind of a cradle thing on my jack. Okay, looks like it's close enough. Looks like we might be able to let the jack down here. That's up. Okay. Are we under? Almost. We're close. There we go. So we can let the jack out from underneath it without letting go of it. Drum roll, please. Okay. A bunch of shit about how easy it is, and then it gives you a hard time. Throw a couple nuts on there. Keep it off my head. Okay. Pretty much all she wrote. The original bearing set's similar, well, like this. This is the original bearing. So you can see that this race rides the inside of that goes inside the housing. Of course, this is a bolt flange. It holds it all together. This side is a passenger side. It doesn't have the, or the driver's side doesn't have the adjustment on it. There's an adjustment dealie underneath this that this doesn't have, but this collar has to come off. This bearing has to come off. And that piece has to come off as well, but it'll come off with the rest of it. So I don't like this bearing. I take it back. It's time to change this bearing. So we're going to change it. I'm going to go ahead and go to the green axle bearings after all, and we'll get started on that. Here's the green axle setup, the bearing setup. There's your Mopar part number. They come as a kit. This has that sleeve compression collar that holds it on. This goes inside the axle housing, and the axle rides through it, and it keeps all the gear oil on that side. This obviously is not a bearing that needs to be greased, so the seals that you'll see, this one's got a nice seal on it, and there is an inner ring on this that you can't see, but they don't come apart. So this whole thing just slides in place to the other one. So it's very simple, and it's plenty heavy duty. I don't think there'll be a problem with it, but this is what, if you didn't know, this is what the green bearing looks like. And this one came from Mancini. I don't think you'll have any problems with it, and we're gonna get started on putting it in. What do you think, buddy? Give it a couple more degrees in the rear? I agree. So you've missed a couple things. I kind of got excited, got ahead of myself, but you know what? We're on a time frame, and that's how it's going to go. So my apologies for not getting all that on film. Some things you may have missed is just a straightforward reassembly of everything. The green bearings slide right in. Everything goes back where it's supposed to, and you don't have to adjust diddly squat. There's a lot of conversation on the internet about the spacer between the axles for the original bearing setup that goes right in here, and it goes in, actually there is, I can't move it too much, but there is a I don't think that's it, that's a different pin, but there's a bolt that you remove that center spacer, and it's a little slug that slides back and forth, and it allows your transfer of force through one axle to the other. So the green bearings don't need that. So we put it all back together, had no problems, and I left the spacer in. So I'm willing to entertain anybody's opinion about that. But it worked for me, so there you go. Took it out on the road, everything worked great except when we got up to 80 kilometers per hour, right? I don't know. Anyway, we got up to speeds where it probably would be cruising. Got a pretty severe vibration, and I've fought that in this car for a while. I thought I had it licked last time I had this thing up, but no. So I started checking angles, and we're off. So I'm going to shim the rear end a little bit and see if I can get some of that angle out of it, and we'll see how it goes. There are a healthy group of people out there who believe, and rightfully so I imagine, that pinion angle should be down. And while that's true, it is another statement to say that versus it's relative to your transmission angle and your drive shaft angle. All these things play together, so not one rule works across the spectrum. You'll notice I've shimmed the axle nose down, or pinion nose down, and after doing math and recognizing where I'd gone wrong, because sometimes positive and negative angles give me a hard time, I realize that this is not, it's too far down in the front. So we're going to take those wedges out and see what we can get done. It's not a hard operation. You just loosen some U-bolts. You don't even have to jack the car up. They'll come out with the car holding its own weight if you're feeling adventurous or your U-bolts are long enough. So that's what we'll do, and hopefully we'll get the angles back into, get the angle of the dangle back into check. So for reference, this is our angle at our rocker. It's as close to level as I could get, but it'll do for our purposes here. It's the idea of leveling the car more or less and finding out what your drive angles are. So it's going to be a little rough, but I'll move it around again. I feel like we've done this already, but why not? So let's see if I can put this someplace where you can see it. Oh, better yet, let's just do it this way. All right. Say hi, buddy. So, a flat spot that's machined on the motor will do for this. And we're looking at 2.5 degrees down, or running downhill from the front of the car. Remember that phrase, it matters. So 2.5 degrees. I'm gonna squirt this, move this around a little bit. Look at that. Okay, so 3.8, that makes more sense. That's what it was last time I measured it. So 3.8, remember that, downhill. So that's your transmission angle. Because machine surfaces are always perpendicular to each other, and motors are usually perpendicular to each other. Okay, now we're interested in the drive shaft, which I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, so let's give it a shot. Drive shaft will be oh hell, I don't think you're going to be able to get that. Nope. Alright, let's try it this way. Because there's not a lot of room in there. Let's stick it on top of the drive shaft. See if we can trick shoot it from underneath. Okay. Forgive the sloppy camera work. Move that up on top. Forgive this while I move it around a little bit and get it to settle, because what we're looking at now is it settling. And me getting it saddled on the drive shaft right. Very top. There's a little groove in the bottom of my angle finder here. That should help me find that. So that's about as good as it gets. 0.7. Down. You'll see the little angle, little symbol on the top corner of the screen there. Down. Alright, so let me dig that back out and let's go back to the rear end and get it. Okay, so there's a flat spot on top of this guy that I've been using. These 8 3/4 don't have a lot of good spots on them. They're kind of like 9 inches. But what I did is I measured it against the back flat of the axle housing, and it's pretty close, within a degree or so. So I'm going to use that. So we're looking at 6.1. All right, 6.1. Moving around a lot. Looks like 6.1. We'll take that. up to 80, and it runs a lot smoother. It's not done yet, but it'll make the trip to Power Tour. I'm going to call that a success for now. Not too sure that the rear bearing in the back of the transmission is off or worn out, or the potential that I didn't really put a gauge on this bell housing before I put it together either, so it's possible the bell housing is a little out of center with the rest of the block. Mark did a really good job with his, I didn't, so I guess we'll call it a wrap. Thanks for watching.